Hello and welcome everybody. It's great to be back with you all for another subsector spotlight from Sectors Made Simple. Today I have a very interesting subsector to talk about. It's one that we probably all know about, but we don't know exactly what it is. We're talking, some industries, you know what it is. You may not know the commodity or the main product of it, but you know what the industry is. This is one that we know what the industry is and we know what the product is, but it's so small that it's almost like it doesn't even exist. But it does. There's billions of dollars in this industry, and it's one of the hottest industries right now because of, well, everything going on in the world. So, today, the topic of today's subsector spotlight is going to be the biotechnology industry. We're going to talk about what it is, exactly what does it cover, because it's a lot more than you may think. And lastly, instead of talking about the companies in it, because honestly there's far too many, we're just going to cover all of the ETFs, because there is still a lot of ETFs, as well as I've run a custom matrix for us so that we can take a look at 6 of these biotech ETFs, compare them against healthcare, and see which ones are the short-term and long-term leaders. So that's the plan for today's webinar. Before I get started, as is tradition here, I want to say hello to everyone we have with us live in this webinar. As a reminder, these webinars are done live on YouTube every Friday at 4 p.m. Los Angeles time, 7 p.m. New York, Florida, or anywhere on the East Coast time. So, hello to Emelida. Thank you for an amazing message as always. Blaze, MG, that's a new name. Welcome to our webinars. Erica, Lucia, Pedro, Rosa, Liliana, Blanca, Jacqueline, my mother, Margarita, Andrew, Evelyn, Kike, Juan, Eddie, Pat, Nancy, WC, and Mario. Great to see you all. Let's get started with today's webinar, shall we? So today's topic is going to be the biotechnology or biotech subsector or industry. Usual disclaimer, we're talking about finance stuff, we're talking about investments. It's all for educational purposes. I do my best to make sure that I create these webinars as recently as I can so that I'm providing the most up-to-date information I can, but mistakes happen, data gets old and goes stale. So again, we're here for educational purposes and to open up your knowledge to something that you may not know much about or anything about. That's the fun of it. Also, I did get a new mic cover, so hopefully it's not as poppy as the previous one was. So if this one is better, please let me know. I will be very happy if it is. So let's get into this presentation. Let's start off pretty simply. What is biotech? Biotech is the name of the sector that you're going to hear. It's likely what you will see, and when someone talks about it, they're going to say biotech, but really biotech is short for biotechnology. It's an incredibly complex industry that for some reason falls under the healthcare sector. Now, the goals of biotech companies are not all the same, and by that I mean they're all completely different. There's some that do farming, some that, create medicines and vaccines, while others are trying to create oil. So their goals and their products are all so different. The reason that we can lump them all together is not in what they produce, but it's in how they produce it. Biotech companies use living things, or don't think of it like living like us. Think about it in living Organisms is the best word I can find. It's a complex word, it's a big word, but it's really what it is. It's something that has not it doesn't have a mind, it can't think, but it is living. It does live, which means it also dies. And we use these things, and oftentimes super, super, super tiny little things, to create products. These products can be anything from disease-resistant crops to vaccines for humans to oil that we can run a car with. So let's just talk about some of the main biotech products that we may see on the market. So again, all of these products involve using organic things or microorganisms to do a certain job. Some of these include oils that are derived from organic things. We can get bioethanol, which is a type of oil. We can get vegetable oil. Vegetable oil, quite literally, is made from vegetables that are pressed and turned into an oil that we can use in cooking. But funny enough, you can also run a car with it. There are cars that run on what are called biofuels. They're really funny because oftentimes what will happen is a bio car will go to McDonald's. And I'm not kidding you. They will go to McDonald's and say, "Hey, can I buy or can you give me your fry oil?" So McDonald's will fry up all of their fries in peanut oil or some kind of high temperature oil. And then after they use it, they're going to throw it away. They have no more use for it. So people that own biofuel cars will go to McDonald's, and McDonald's will just give them gallons upon gallons upon gallons of this biofuel. And that's what they fill their car with. They will fill their car with leftover French fry oil from McDonald's. And I kid you not, there was a person at my high school that drove a biofuel car, and it smelled like French fries. This car smelt like French fries because all of the exhaust, it's only the oil that they used to make French fries. So go figure, oil that was used to make French fries is going to smell like some potatoes and some French fries. But that's an alternative fuel. That is a fuel that is not taking something out of the ground, it's turning plants into oil, using that oil to cook our food, and then once it's done being used for food, it can be repurposed for a car. Or anything that runs on gas can be repurposed to use biofuels. And then, as my mom is saying, omega-3 is fish oil, or good old pichol. So, debemos tomar nuestro fichol porque es una cosa de biotech. We like our fichol because it's part of the biotech industry. And then another one that I'm not going to get into if it's a good thing or a bad thing. That's your opinion, and we'll keep it as that. GMOs, genetically modified crops. These are plants that we've gone in and messed with what they are. So corn is still corn, or beans are still beans, but they may grow a little faster. They may grow a little bit bigger. Or the main use of GMOs is we need to protect our plants. There are bugs and diseases that will kill plants. So GMOs allow us to, instead of putting pesticides or other sorts of chemicals onto the plant, we make these plants resistant to that disease. It literally is born knowing or being immune to this disease. So GMOs allow us to farm without needing pesticides, without needing chemicals, because the plant is the pesticide. It is its own cure to this disease. Another fun little thing on this topic. Have you ever had bananas, like the peel back and eat kind of banana? Okay. Have you ever had banana flavored candy, specifically Laffy Taffy or any banana flavored candy? They don't taste the same. And by that, I mean they taste completely different. Why? We can get things that taste like strawberries. We can get things that taste like root beer. You can get things that taste like farts. I kid you not, Jelly Bellies made by the Harry Potter, or like the Harry Potter branded jelly beans, there is one that's fart flavor. But why can't banana candy taste like banana the fruit? Well, it's not that the flavor is artificial or the flavor is wrong. The bananas that we know and love are not bananas. They're not what the flavor of the candy is. Way back when, candies were supposed to be flavored like the fruit. And the original banana was a little chunkier. It was shorter, thicker, and had a really big rind down the middle of it. But that banana, that was the banana that is around the world. Like, we didn't eat bananas like we have now. This was the old banana. And there was a disease that wiped all of them out. Every single banana gone worldwide. So the bananas that we now eat today are a completely different type of banana. One that we created to be resistant to this disease. Let me find the exact name of the disease. Panama disease. Panama disease was the name of it. And it wiped out the entire world's bananas because they were all one type of banana, and that banana got killed. So we created a type of banana that is resistant to that disease. And that is now the banana that we all know, love, and eat as the fruit. The candy is the taste of the old banana. The old banana that is no longer in this world is the flavor of the banana candy. So the next time you get a banana candy, remember that you are now tasting a fruit that is wiped out from existence. Kind of cool. So, was GMOs responsible for these new bananas? Kind of. We didn't have the ability to modify the genes or the seeds back then, but we did do something called natural selection. We chose specific bananas or specific fruits that would be more resistant to this disease. Once we found and made one that worked for us, we spread it across the world, and that is now the banana that we all know, love, and eat today. So that's the value of GMOs. If it wasn't for GMOs and the ability to modify crops, we would no longer have, the banana would no longer be a fruit. We would not be eating bananas today. So, love them or hate them, GMOs are to thank for the fact that we have bananas. I'm allergic, so I don't really care, but many people like bananas, Kira included. And then the last big product that we probably know about, healthcare products. This is what everyone thinks about when they think biotech. They think vaccines, antibiotics, probiotics, anything like that that uses something that's alive. is a biotech product. Is GMO bad? I'm not going to answer that. The reason is because it is the idea of GMOs is not bad, but the way that GMOs are sold and are done is. Again, that's a whole other story, and that gets into companies and politics, and this isn't, after all, an investment webinar, so I don't want to get into the politics of things like that. If you're interested in learning more about it, I highly recommend going and researching Monsanto, which is one of the largest GMO creators and producers in the US. It's a very fascinating case. The societal value of GMOs is there, and they're safe. They are 100% safe. So like, it's not a matter of being a health risk. But there is some other business and political stuff that gets involved. Hence why, well, I don't really want to talk about it. But there is one more extremely small but still biotech thing that I need to talk about. Bioweapons. Yes, bioweapons and creating diseases that are meant to hurt people or damage a company or a country's food supply. That is biotech. It's the ugly part. Thankfully, it's an extremely small part. Most of the bioweapon industry is cures to it, finding cures and ways of preventing these attacks. Is Pfizer a public company? Yes, it is. What name did I say? Monsanto. Elizabeth got the spelling right above. So yeah, that's the name of the company. So let's go through and answer a very good question here. Is biotech healthcare? Or does it follow its name? Biotechnology. Is biotechnology part of technology? Because if you noticed, healthcare was only a single line of everything that biotech companies do. So why, after all, is biotech under healthcare? Simple. Healthcare is where the majority of companies and some of the most successful biotech companies are. So while biotech companies create products for many different sectors, including farming and agriculture, technology, and warfare, healthcare biotechs are the most successful. They are the ones that are the best, or are the largest market cap, let's say it like that. But to understand this a little bit more, let's talk through what a biotech company actually does. And now that we've decided healthcare or technology, we need to talk subsector. We need to talk industry here, because there's two industries that are very similar, but with one small difference: pharmaceuticals and biotechs. Again, the question, once you've answered why is biotech under healthcare and not technology, you have to ask, well, what's the difference between biotech and a pharmaceutical company? After all, both of these industries do the same thing. They produce medicines, vaccines, antibiotics, and probiotics for humans or other living things. If we all have pets, when our pets get sick, we take them to the vet. The vet gives them medication. That medication is not meant for humans, it's meant for pets. Like Cleo, who is on plenty of medications right now because she is not feeling great, but she's getting better. So while pharmaceutical companies tend to work with chemicals, they work with elements, with compounds, with gases, with metals. Biotechs work with organic, living things or organisms. And again, before you start thinking that we're killing some living thing so that we don't have to die, here's my counter argument. yeast that we use to bake. Anytime that you've used yeast, guess what? That is living. Yeast is a living thing. When we give it water or sugar, it likes that, so it grows. That's why bread rises. It's literally the yeast blooming and trying to reproduce. So don't think of it like we're turning an animal into a product. Think of it more like we're taking something like yeast, something that is a bacteria or a microorganism, a tiny, tiny, tiny thing. It doesn't think, it doesn't have a decision-making process. The only thing that it knows how to do is try and stay alive and make more of itself so when it dies, there's more to live on. That's all it does. So that is what biotech companies use. They use oftentimes microorganisms like yeast, like some types of mold that you would have in your cheeses, things like that is what they use. There's always a joke. When bread goes moldy, someone's going to look at it and say, oh, don't worry, that's just penicillin. They're not wrong. Penicillin is a medicine that was made from the mold on bread and from other wheat-based products. So, yeah, a lot of our medicines come from biological living things. So now that we know the difference between pharmaceuticals and biotechs, and we know why it's healthcare and not technology, let's talk about what biotech companies do. Their goal, and the vast majority of biotechs, don't create products. They create, well, unfortunate word, technology. They research and develop, or they use R&D to test new things, test new methods, test new products, test new reactions, finding all of the ways that they can use living things to benefit society, humans, pets, anything. So what they'll do is they will find a need. They will see, oh, there's this disease that there's no cure for. Can we take something and create a cure for it? Not by using chemicals, but by using microorganisms or using bacteria or using sometimes viruses. We will give ourselves a virus so that our body recognizes it. Or they may use a piece of technology, an advancement in medicine, like mRNA technology. More on that later. But mRNA was a type of technology that it was useful, it had its purposes, and it was researched. But COVID was the first time that mRNA vaccines and technology became the hottest topic. mRNA vaccines are the new big thing. And for good reason. It is a type of technology that has many, many, many potential uses, including Alzheimer's and some types of cancer. So it's incredible what mRNA that we used a while back to try and treat one of the first coronaviruses of the 21st century, to now two of the leading vaccines in the world utilize mRNA technology, to thinking now what can we do to solve Alzheimer's and other issues in the body using this technology. So mRNA is the symbol for Moderna. It is very, very fitting. Yep. So we've gotten now through how they do it and where everything starts. It starts with a need, or it starts with a technology to see what they can solve. Now, after a product is developed, it's not like they can just go start selling it right away. They need to get some approval from good old government organizations. And the three-letter alphabet soup company, or the three-letter alphabet soup organization, is the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. After all, these are drugs. Is it true mRNA can clone body parts? This is not an 100% sure thing. I have never heard or read a study about that, so I'm not sure. I would think not. That's a pretty big thing. Like, that's cell regeneration. That's something that mRNA doesn't do, to my knowledge. But again, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not in biotech, so I don't know what they might be developing that we don't even know exists. So I have no clue. But if that's a use for it, that would be pretty darn cool. But again, once a company has found a technology, found its use, put everything together, they can't just start selling it. They need to get approval by the FDA in the United States, as well as other countries, and the EU, the European Union, has their own health organization that needs to approve it before it can be sent out to the public. And I'll tell you what, R&D is extremely expensive. Not only is it expensive, it takes a lot of time, and you're not making money. If you can't sell your product, you're not making money. If you're not making money, where are you getting the money for the R&D? That is the challenge in biotech. The challenge starts and almost ends with money. Because here's the thing. Failure of a product or failure of a company in biotech is expensive and is extremely costly. What does mRNA stand for? Messenger RNA. RNA is a type of sequence that is, so there's DNA and then there's RNA. RNA is basically like, or mRNA is like a blueprint that tells something how to build itself, where to go in the body, and things like that. I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but again, this is not a biology class. But again, it's a very fascinating thing because it is one of the smallest components of our bodies, is mRNA and DNA. But again, what I was saying before is R&D is expensive, failure is almost expected. There is an organization, it's a really goofy name, the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, that did a study back in 2020. And they found that 90% of applications for biotech products sent to the FDA fail. They don't get approved and the company flops. The average cost to develop the technology, test the product, and get approval for the product is about $2.6 billion US. And it's not like if you have that money, suddenly, ta-da, you're good. Nope. Approval on average takes 10 to 15 years from the development of that technology to the FDA's approval or denial decision. So that's a lot of time, and that's a ridiculous amount of money for a 90% failure. And even then, only 8% of bio companies make a profit. 92% of biotech companies are losing money. So why in the world are they doing it? If it is so expensive, if it is 90% likely that even if they create something, it's going to get rejected, and if it gets rejected, you don't find out tomorrow, you find out in 10 to 15 years. Why in the world are they doing it? Well, it's that when you succeed, success is extremely, extremely profitable. So FDA approval is time consuming. Developing a medication or a treatment is expensive and takes even more time. But for the drugs that get approved, they can be ridiculously profitable. Let's go through some of the biggest ones. All of this data is from a 2020 analysis. So this is from last year, not this year. This year, I'll talk about what the biggest drug is going to be. But Humira for arthritis is valued or sold $19.8 billion worth of product. Keytruda, which is a cancer treatment, sold $14.4 billion. Eylea for vision loss sold $10.7 billion. And Dupixent for asthma sold $8.1 billion. So, now we're in 2021. These are the numbers for things that have been on the market. Let's talk about the new kid on the block. Pfizer and Moderna and their vaccines for COVID. We don't have numbers for Moderna, but back in March, Pfizer released a statement saying that they were expecting to make about $23.5 billion from the COVID vaccine in 2021. They lied. They didn't lie. They were wrong. Back in July, last month, they changed that estimate. Pfizer now expects to make $33.5 billion US dollars from its COVID-19 vaccine in 2021. That is almost double Humira, the second place, or the number one from 2020. That is how much money there is for companies in biotech. If there is a massive need, there are billions of dollars to be gained from that. And once you've created the med, it's there. It's there forever. You don't need to redo the technology every year. So people always ask, why is medicine so expensive? The reason is research. That research and development costs money. Doing all of that requires investors. Those investors want a profit. So once the drug is released, you're not just paying for the cost of the medication, you're paying for the cost of researching it, the cost for those investors, the cost for the FDA approval, the cost for all of the trials that need to be done. It's ridiculous how much money it takes to make the first medication for something. And pretty soon after, you get generic brand stuff. You get the same medication, but without the brand name and a lot cheaper. It's not that they produce it for cheaper, it's that they didn't need to do the research and development. They just needed to get FDA approval for their version of this medication. So that's it. That's why healthcare, or that's why medicines can be so expensive. You're not paying for what it costs to make it. If you want to know the costs to make it plus a little bit, go look at the generic brand. But the brand name company is charging more because they need to pay off all of that investment. So now let's talk about the elephant in the room, and by that I mean the reason that biotech is such a hot topic at the moment: COVID. Again, biotech is such a popular industry right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Many biotech companies in the US, but also worldwide, all raced to find a vaccine for COVID-19. And not just that. While many companies were trying to find the vaccine to prevent us from getting sick, many more companies tried to create treatments for patients with COVID-19 infections. So there were some companies working to stop you from getting sick, and then there were other companies that if you got sick, were trying to create ways for you to not be as sick, recover faster, or help protect you against the virus. That's what biotech does. It's not just one thing. It's approaching the same problem, COVID-19, from multiple different angles. Prevention, treatment, recovery. All of these are areas that require different companies, different treatments, and of course, different trials and different approvals to get those meds from the laboratory into our bodies. So I just am going to mention a few of the big names that are involved in biotech for the vaccine side. Those are Pfizer, which partnered with BioNTech for their vaccine. Moderna, which partnered, Moderna. AstraZeneca, and many, many, many more. There is Sputnik over in Russia. There is, I forget the Chinese one. There's an Indian one. There are different vaccines around the world because the US is not the only biotech nation. Most established countries have biotech companies that will look to challenge and find the answer to these problems. Johnson & Johnson, exactly. There are hundreds of companies that were involved in trying to create a COVID-19 vaccine. There were some that helped to find out what COVID looks like. There are others that helped to create the actual thing to prevent us from getting sick. Then there was the approval process. There's so many parts of this, and time was against us. So these companies needed to work together to find the cure as fast as possible. Now, on the other side, what if you're already sick? How do we prevent you from getting more sick? That's where other companies come in. Companies like Abbott and Amgen, companies like Regeneron and Sorrento are all companies that have worked on, created, and are now sending to hospitals medications and steroids to help people that are sick with COVID-19 recover faster and with minimal damage to their bodies. So COVID-19 did a lot of damage. But one thing it also did was increase the amount of funding available to biotechnology companies because we needed a vaccine immediately. So billions upon billions of US dollars were invested into biotech companies to help fund the research, but also, once the research was done and the vaccine was made, speed up that approval process for these treatments and vaccines. Now, I'm going to just highlight some more factual things here really quickly. Does this mean that they cut corners and they cheated to get FDA approval so quickly? No. Does this mean that the vaccine isn't tested? No. And how do we know? Because if this technology is so new, how do we know that it's safe? Because it's not new. And it also isn't untested. Yes, COVID-19 was a thing that started in late 2019, but affected the world in 2020. But COVID-19 is SARS-CoV-2. There was a SARS-CoV-1. The original coronavirus, I will call it. Back in 2002, China had another outbreak of a virus. And this virus was given the name and is now known as the SARS coronavirus. The virus name is SARS-CoV or CoV-1. This was the SARS virus back in 2002. And it spread incredibly quickly. Not as fast as COVID-19, but spread pretty quickly and became a global concern. But due to public health measures, mask wearing, distancing, and social guidelines, we were able to eliminate it without the need for herd immunity or without the need for a vaccine. But we didn't just hope that it would suddenly disappear. Just like with COVID, many companies were given a lot of funding to try and create a cure, to try and create a vaccine for SARS. So while it was spreading, many biotechs were given money and started researching to create a vaccine for SARS. And some of these biotechs started to research not a new type of technology, but one that had never been used in medicine before, called mRNA. mRNA, or messenger RNA, are like a blueprint that tells organisms how to make a protein. Not the like protein that you eat or you put in a smoothie or whatnot. We're not talking about that. Think about it like, well, let's take a virus. Let's take COVID. We all have seen the images of what COVID looks like. It's a ball with a bunch of little spiky things around it. Those spiky things are proteins. These proteins are also inside of the virus. It tells it what to look like. It makes it a circle with these little pointy things. But it doesn't just do that. It tells it where in the body to go to, but also how to reproduce. How do I make more of myself? The answer is the mRNA. So mRNA vaccines, first, before we get into that, let's talk about the flu shot. Let's talk about many of the vaccines that we all know, love, and get stuck into our arm every now and again. One of the oldest ways to create a vaccine was to take a virus, so let's just say the flu. Take the flu and basically kill it. So we have a bunch of dead flu viruses. They can no longer get us sick, but they are flu viruses. They are the real deal. And we take those, stick them in our body. So our body isn't there, like this isn't going to get us sick. We're not going to get the flu from the flu vaccine. But we are putting in our bodies a flu virus. We are literally giving ourselves the flu, but the flu cells or the flu viruses are already dead. So our body looks at them and just goes, I don't like you, and learns how to fight it off. So that's how the old vaccines worked. And many of them still do. They use real viruses that are dead, so they can't reproduce, to do all of this. And Lucy, don't worry, I've got you on the list of ETFs as well as a matrix for all of the ETFs that I will be talking about. So bear with me. mRNA vaccines are different. mRNA vaccines, we don't give ourselves the virus. We don't take dead COVID viruses and stick them in our body. Instead, what we do is we give ourselves the mRNA, the blueprint for these proteins that the viruses use to reproduce. So literally what we're sticking in there is something that looks like COVID, but is not, nor has it ever been COVID. All it is a blueprint for how to make a new COVID virus. So what we do is once we have those mRNAs, once we know what COVID looks like on the outside, we create something that pretends to be those little spiky points around COVID, around the actual virus itself. That is how they reproduce. They stick a healthy cell with those little points. Those points put all of the mRNA from the virus into the healthy cell, and boom, now we have a new virus. So when we're giving mRNA vaccines, there is no COVID virus. There is no live or even dead virus. The only thing it is we give ourselves the blueprint for how these viruses are made that they can never make themselves. Let's get that. They can never actually make themselves. The only things they can do is pretend to look like COVID, so our body learns how to fight it off and learns how to beat those spikes. It learns how to beat that specific looking thing. And that's why the mRNA vaccines, and really all vaccines, are not as effective against the new variants. Variants change things. And some of the biggest changes will happen on those little points. Those points are arranged differently and they work slightly differently. So think about it like this. It's like you're trying to put out a grease fire, where with a normal fire, you just put water on it. A grease fire, you have to put a lid on it or stop the air from getting in. Same fire, they're both fire, they both are hot, and they will burn you. But two different ways that you need to put them out. Same thing with mRNA vaccines and the new Delta variant. It looks similar, but not exactly the same. So our body knows somewhat how to fight it off, but it's not what we're used to seeing, so it's going to catch us off guard a little bit. But all of these vaccines aim to do one thing in particular: create antibodies that will help us to get rid of that specific protein, or in other words, the virus itself. And let me remind us all, mRNA vaccines do not contain the virus, do not contain dead cells of the virus. Literally, it has never even touched a COVID virus. The only thing it's done is pretended to look like COVID on the outside, so our bodies learn how to beat it. So if all of this was in 2002, why are we in 2021 still fighting a COVID or a coronavirus? Well, because just as SARS was short-lived, it literally only took 8 months from the first case to the end of the global crisis. When the outbreak ended, so did the funding for mRNA vaccines and treatments. But in those 8 months, a lot of research and development, as well as some clinical trials, went on looking at mRNA technology and how that technology can be used to treat not just SARS, the coronavirus from 2002, but any virus, many different types of viruses and other diseases as well. But the sad thing is, without the SARS funding and without the need for this new thing, the technology went unused. And that brings us to today. COVID-19 has brought about a new need for mRNA because we've needed to find a new way to prevent this disease's spread, this virus's spread. And the cool thing is a lot of the technology and research that we did back in 2002 into the SARS vaccine was able to be brought back and reused because of the similarities between these diseases. And now, there's no question that any country is willing to throw billions upon billions upon billions of dollars to try and find a vaccine. And now there's a lot more funding. We have a lot more technology and a lot more capability to research this vaccine. So a lot of the work for approval had already been done. They already knew what it looked like. The technology was established. They didn't need to talk about what is this technology. Everyone already knew. So once the spike protein, that part that actually is responsible for the reproduction, once we knew what that looked like, or what was called sequenced. Once we sequenced the virus, the vaccine was developed pretty quickly. So the vaccine development, the research, done in 2002. The development for the vaccine, done in 2020, my bad. But the question that people always have is, well, how was it approved so quickly? How, 1 year after its development, do we already have an FDA-approved vaccine? And even before that, we had EUA, Emergency Use Authorization. So it's not FDA approved, but people can get it because it's needed. It saves us from an emergency. But that doesn't answer how in the world did we get this through so quickly. 3 reasons. 1, a large number of volunteers. You tell people that you have a cure for COVID or a vaccine that will prevent you from catching COVID. Well, yeah, a lot of people are going to want that. So Pfizer and Moderna and all of these biotechs were turning people away. They had too many people wanting to be a part of these trials. Think about it like this. If a company is developing a new untested cancer treatment, they're going to need to find people that A, have cancer, and B, are willing to risk their own lives to test this medicine. With COVID, there was hundreds of thousands of people that were ready and willing to get jabbed in the arm if it means they don't catch COVID, and it means that they get to get this vaccine out faster. So hundreds of thousands applied, tens of thousands were put through clinical trials where they're testing many things. A, how good is the vaccine? B, how much of the vaccine should we give? So 1 dose, 2 doses, or 3 doses. Now they're doing a lot of clinical trials in, do we give a 3rd dose? Why do we give a 3rd dose? At what point do we give a 3rd dose? Who do we give the 3rd dose to? All of these are things that these clinical trials help to find. Then the second is that there was not many, if any, that I could find clinical trials for the SARS-CoV vaccine, SARS vaccine. But there were non-human trials, rats. So we had some studies from back then to have an idea of how living things react to these vaccines. And here's the most important part. The potential risks of the vaccine are tiny compared to the risks of actually catching COVID. There is no live virus in the mRNA vaccines. It does not do anything to your body. It doesn't give you chemicals. The only thing it does is help your body to create antibodies, a way for your body to fight that disease off. It's not putting anything in your body. It's not doing anything to you. The only thing it's doing is it's giving you something that on the outside looks like COVID and on the inside is nothing. So that your body learns when there's something that looks like that, how to beat it. That's all it does. And the risks of that are incredibly, 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 incredibly small. The risks of catching COVID and what can happen when you or someone that you love catches it are huge. So that's a decision everyone needs to make on their own right. But there's a lot of research and development for over almost 20 years into mRNA vaccines. This is not something that's just new today. This is not something that's new in the last year. This tech has been around for 20 years, but now all of a sudden there was a need for it and there was a lot more funding for it. So what's next? Well, anticlimactic, but mostly nothing's changed in biotech. mRNA vaccines are the hot topic right now, but it hasn't changed the fact that funding will always be a challenge for these smaller companies. And for publicly traded large companies, they will continue to partner with labs such as Moderna and Biotech to produce and distribute medical products. Lucia saying, I'm telling you, Jonathan, you should explain to people afraid of the vaccine. Everyone is going to make their own decision. I'm not here to convince people, but all I'm trying to do is share the information and the science behind the vaccines, because the vaccines, this is one of the largest breakthroughs in medical technology that we've had. This is huge. And again, it has possibilities to treat Alzheimer's and other degenerative issues in the body. mRNA is an incredible area of research that now finally has gotten the funding it needs. And because it's gotten the funding, they're all super profitable now. So they all have billions of dollars to reinvest into new research and development for mRNA vaccines and mRNA treatments in the future. But now, to answer the question from before, ETFs that trade biotech companies. Here's a list of 6. iShares Biotechnology is IBB. ARC, Genomic Revolution, so genomes are a type of biotech. ARKG. The State Street Spider, S&P Biotech, is XBI. First Trust New York Stock Exchange is FBT. iShare Genomics Immunology and Healthcare, focusing on vaccines and healthcare as opposed to broad biotech, is iDNA. And the last one is Invesco Dynamic Biotechnology, PBE. I picked these from a list of over 30 different biotech ETFs. There are literally 30 plus biotech ETFs. So I encourage you to go check out etfdb.com or etf.com to see the full list of all of the biotech ETFs. These are just 6 of the biggest. But let's go through the takeaways. Biotech is an extremely well-established but very difficult industry that is completely sink or swim. You either make billions or you spend billions to fail. Biotech companies are involved in a lot more than just healthcare. They're involved in agriculture, in, sadly, warfare, but most importantly, yes, healthcare. Many, if not all, biotechs aim to make life better and more sustainable for us by using biology, using plants, using gene modification or genetic modification to create products that are more resilient to diseases, require us to use less chemicals, and ultimately give us a better end product. Either the product being plants that we use, food that we eat, or a stronger, healthier body. Biotech is such a hot topic because of the attention it's gained and the funding it's gained from the result of the COVID pandemic. But as technology becomes better and better, the research and development has already been done, so it gets cheaper. Expect to see biotech continue to grow both as an industry, but more importantly, a solution to problems that we face as a society. We will always continue to get sick, and we can't pretend that we know all of the ways we can get sick. COVID has shown that. So the best thing we can do is use everything to our abilities, or within our abilities, to solve these problems. And it's not just chemicals. Chemicals are one way, but biology and microorganisms is another. And it's a very, very successful way to do it. Before we end today's webinar, I want to quickly show everyone a custom matrix that I've ran. And to give you an idea, I haven't even looked at it myself yet. So we're about to look at this together for the first time. I ran the 6 different ETFs that I talked about on that second to last slide, plus the healthcare sector ETF. And let's look at what that matrix looks like, and then that is where I will leave you for today. Uh-oh. All right. this is what that matrix looks like. We see healthcare. This is our benchmark, way down here. And not just that, we see it with all long-term strength, zero short-term strength. Moving up, we see IBB stands out here to me with a positive trend of 6, but an X count of 3 for a total count of 9. And then sharing the top spot is XBI and iDNA. If we look at our momentum over 1 week, we can see that XBI used to only have a total count of 2, and over just the past week alone has skyrocketed to become the relative strength leader for biotech ETFs. iDNA has been a leader. Even back 2 weeks ago, we still see that it was at a total count of 10. So the up-and-comer, the new guy making his way to the leadership, is XBI. iDNA is the old person that has been there for a while. Who's the better one? That's for you to decide. Because for everyone, their investment decision is going to be a little bit different. Some prefer momentum, while others prefer long-term strength. But I hope that today has provided more knowledge and information, not just into the biotech subsector, the biotech industry, but why this technology matters, how this technology works, and most importantly, how it makes everything in our lives, including our health, simpler. So, from me and the entire Sectors Made Simple team, thank you all so much for joining us for today's Subsector Spotlight. It has been an absolute pleasure to get to share this information with you. If you have any questions, comments, or subsectors or industries you want to hear me talk about in a future webinar, please send us an email at support@sectorsmadesimple.com. I'll put that in chat right now as well. So that is our email. We do not have a support team. We have myself, Cleo, and Kira, and sometimes Cleo the cat to help us out. So if you send us an email, we will be the ones to read it, and we will definitely try and help you out in whatever way we can to make investment and the world in general just a little bit simpler. Thank you all so much. Have an amazing weekend, and we'll see you all back next week for another Subsector Spotlight, as well as another members webinar on Tuesday. Thank you all so much. Be safe. Take care.